You do not fear death. You think this makes you strong. It makes you weak.
Why?
How can you move faster than possible, fight longer than possible, without the most powerful impulse of the spirit? The fear of death.
I do fear death. I fear dying in here, while my city burns. There's no one there to save it.
Then make the climb.
How?
As the child is. Without the rope. Then fear will find you again.
Ah, supplies for your journey. Oh, that's wonderful. That's
What does that mean?
rise.
Hello, movie lovers. Welcome home. My name is Amy Hensterling, and you are listening to Watch This List. This is an impossible episode in which Tyler Harris and I attempt to cover Christopher Nolan's entire filmography, which is perhaps as daunting a task as adapting The Odyssey for IMAX. So it feels appropriate that we are doing this now before he makes his gigantic, epic film. And then Tyler is going to have to come back after that. And maybe we'll just do like a quick thing just for that movie, actually, next year.
Oh, quick? You think it would be quick?
Or we could do it in like, maybe I could like live stream.
Yeah, I like that idea.
I will record, like we'll go on opening night, and then afterwards you'll call me and we'll record it and then release it before everybody sees it.
Here's our 3.5 hour unpacking of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey.
Okay, Tyler, be honest. Is this not like your like dream? I mean,
everybody remembers where they were when JFK was assassinated. Everybody remembers where they were when 9/11 happened. I remember where I was when Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey was announced.
Yes, and then we texted each other. We texted, yes.
I texted like 100 people.
Okay. Frank and I were first, surely.
Yes. And yes. I think I immediately got in my car and rolled all the windows down and drove 90 miles per hour through a 25 just to feel something like that again. Because the high immediately wore off. So.
Right. You know, well, it's the anticipation. You have to kind of anticipate for a long time now.
Needless to say, I'm very excited. So 2 things real quick. First, I'm very disappointed that you didn't start this episode with the words, "We'll see you at the movies." And,
shoot. And then gone backwards.
Gotta move backwards.
Tyler, you should have told me that before we started.
And 2, this is a weird episode because normally I come to you with an idea. I came to you and begged to do a Ridley Scott episode. Frank and I came to you and begged to do Tenet.
Yeah.
even though it wasn't really your bag. Tenet wasn't, but
No.
but we did I thought a great episode on it, and but this is a little different. It's kind of opposite day. You came to me with the
Yes.
idea of a Christopher Nolan episode, and I'm curious. I don't want to know why you came to me specifically. I'm just curious what prodded you to want to do a Nolan episode. I
Right.
guess.
Well, and we also the end. I don't know whose idea the end of the year one was. That was. But then you and Frank kind of took over how the whole structure of it, and I lost my mind.
But it all worked
out. It was in tears on the phone.
It all yes, that's deep lore there.
So what happened was I went to Nashville, and I had I recorded the Moneyball episode. I went to Nashville. I was deep in like dealing with my traumas and learning about addiction and being with a counselor and all these women that were trying to get better. And then I came home and watched Batman Begins, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. Batman Begins is such a recovery movie. Rises is such a recovery movie. And then I was like, who should I do this with? And I think that you had actually maybe logged one within a short time frame. I'm almost positive I saw something and I was like, okay, that was a sign.
I don't know. I don't remember what I watched unless I have my letterbox pulled up in front of me. So I don't remember what I logged. But yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. Okay, yeah. So tied deeply into the recovery process and this retreat that you were on.
Yes.
Okay. And
I wanted to do it soon. I wanted to do it with it, and then you were like, okay, I have the day off on May 2nd. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So why not an episode on just the Dark Knight trilogy? Why expand it out to his entire filmography? What about Nolan makes this a conversation specific to personal growth?
Well, I felt like there was no way.
By the way, I'm the host now.
I know.
I
feel like we should have structured it this way anyway. So I'll just put you on the left, and then you can question me. Yeah. So yeah, I felt like you would want to do Nolan. You're the person.
Yes.
You're so maximalist. You
right.
My first experience with you was Phantom of the Opera. So ever since then, I have associated your personality with just really big.
Go big or go home. Yes.
And then I was
operatic.
I wanted to watch The Prestige again. I really wanted to watch Dunkirk again. And then Oppenheimer. I mean, I was I've only seen some of these movies one time. So I was I need to do this just so that I have a refresher. Right. Because the Dark Knight trilogy I've seen many times.
Sure.
As I would imagine you have.
Yes. Well,
right.
A lot of Nolan movies are just deeply formative to my upbringing and my development as a film fan. Nolan is almost kind of like a Spielberg figure in my life. I always like to say, every film bro has daddy issues with Steven Spielberg. Is Spielberg will be the kind of the entry point into film for a lot of people. And then once they start dipping their toe into art house cinema, they'll be like, oh, Spielberg, blah. The kind of the Terry Gilliam, oh, you need everything wrapped with a nice little bow on it for you, you little baby. You need Steven Spielberg to tell you, pat you on the head and tell you everything's going to be okay. It's that kind of thing. And I definitely went through some of that with Nolan as well. Oh, Nolan, he's almost too big to fail in a way, and he's the one. What makes Nolan so popular? What is it? I still don't know what makes Nolan so popular, but so it's that idea of kind of the develop, and then I love Spielberg, I love Nolan now. It was just this whole process of kind of coming back around to appreciating these auteurs, even though they work on as big of a canvas as possible. We talked about this with Ridley Scott, of course, and Ridley Scott is one of Nolan's biggest heroes and influences, but it's such an interesting kind of intersection there.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Okay. I have one question. Hold on to your thought. Sure. How many of these have you seen in the theater?
How many Nolan movies?
Yes, because I have, so he did Following Memento and Insomnia, and I don't think I saw Insomnia in the theater, but I definitely saw Batman Begins in the theater, and then from then on, I have seen all of them, most of them on opening night.
It's the exact same for me. I have seen
Okay.
every Nolan movie since Batman Begins in the theater, most of them on
opening night. Okay, so that's another thing here to say is that, like, this is not just, I can't say that about many filmmakers that I have literally, and I made it a point, like every July, he would always release in July. And so I would be there, like, really on opening night, and wherever I was, Chicago or here or whatever. And I remember specifically planning for those things. Like, it was always an event, and I don't think I could say that about any other director. There's no other director where I'm like,
I mean, there's lots of directors that I'm obsessed with that no matter what they release, I'll go see it on opening night. But Nolan is the biggest one.
Yeah, I would say Nolan is the biggest one. And it's every couple of years, so it's not like it's not all the time, you know?
Right.
I mean, Oppenheimer is 2023, and then
right, and it feels like it was just yesterday. I was
know.
looking at that. I'm like, what, 2023? And we're practically almost done with 2025, even though we're not even halfway through the year. So
yeah, it'll be nothing before Odyssey, but it feels like that just happened.
Yeah, bizarre.
It does. Yeah.
Speaking
what were you
of
going to say? Go ahead.
Ridley Scott and Christopher Nolan, so I actually taught a film production class a couple of semesters ago at the high school that I teach at, the Catholic Boys High School. And for some reason, Nolan and Scott were my go-tos. So in the film production class, I mean, yeah, for some reason, who could have ever guessed that would have been the case? But we kind of structured the class like, here's how a film is made. And so I took them through the process of making a movie, and I would show them a movie at every stage of the production process. So here's a movie that's a really good example of a script. Here's a movie that's a really good example of cinematography. Here's a movie that's a really good example of sound editing or music or post-production efforts. And so we watched The Prestige, Blade Runner, and Gladiator. The Prestige, of course, was for screenplay. Because I think that movie has, like a lot of Nolan films, a hermetically sealed, perfect script. And so Ridley Scott, Christopher Nolan, there's this question of, are these guys auteurs? Are they not auteurs? Because they're working on these big, broad canvases, the blockbuster, like you mentioned. I think there are more obvious auteurs. You just recently did a Bergman episode, for instance. Obviously, an auteur, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
or like Malick.
Right, Malick with Mitch, right. So, like, there are more obvious auteurs. There's something about the auteur element colliding with the mass appeal element, though, that appeals, I think, specifically to me. It really connects with me for some reason. I think partially because I'm fascinated by popular culture and why people like what they like psychologically. Like, how do these big pieces of art affect us symbolically on a mass scale, and why do they work on a mass scale? So, like, what is it about Christopher Nolan that makes him so popular with all different types of people, from the film bros to the art hoes and even the Joe Schmo on the street? Like, everybody knows Nolan and everybody loves Nolan, it seems like. Okay,
but also you have to point out too with Nolan that he can do whatever he wants. He's
the ultimate blank check filmmaker.
Yes, it's not just that, like, people like him. He can literally do anything and they will like him. Those are different things.
Yeah, like, and so contrast that against someone else that I'm sort of obsessed with, a little bit more let's just say it would take a little bit more elbow grease to get you to record a provocateur episode about him. But someone I'm a little obsessed with, someone like Alex Garland, right? Who I think is kind of actually very similar in sentiment to directors like Scott and Nolan, but he doesn't really get like the raucous, over the top praise that those other guys get.
Yeah, and he doesn't get the mass appeal. He's a lot more. He's a lot weirder,
much more divisive for people.
Yeah,
movies like Men, movies like Civil War. That sort of like intellectual pulse that he has actually works in a weird way to drive people away, it seems like. Whereas Nolan is extremely intellectual, but it never becomes overwhelming for some reason. Even though it is overwhelming.
Interstellar is like, I mean, none of these, like, when I was rewatching Interstellar, I was like, how did he get away with this? Okay. Like, the dialogue and oh my gosh. And even to a certain extent,
you mean like
Inception.
that MRI. If it hadn't been for that MRI, my wife would have. They would have found my wife's cancer.
Love is the answer. Okay, but I'm just saying, like, it doesn't matter. For some reason with Nolan, it's like the friend who like you like so much so he can't do any wrong. Like there's just like certain people who because they're like technically brilliant and there's all these, I mean, because he could also make like a 3-hour movie. The length doesn't matter. Nothing prevents him from being beloved. And that's a fascinating thing. Like I don't think he can fail, actually. Like I don't. And it's not like he does the same thing over and over again. Arguably, I think time and like chronology, there's certain things that are like staples of his, but he doesn't make the same movie over and over.
I think there's one of two options. He's either a dumb man's idea of a genius and everybody is dumb, including me.
Or he's God.
Or he really is a genius and our society can still actually like hold up genius as an ideal to strive for or something to be appreciated. But
yeah, I mean, it's interesting though that this person, like we have to start, okay, we're going to skip following. Tyler is going to mention it and just, we'll just mention it tertiarily. But I think that like Memento is the thing that I'm like, okay, this is what he started with. And it is interesting that he did that because that's his most like indie feeling film where there's not a lot of like special effects in terms of, I mean, it's not on a grand scale like we normally associate with him. It's a lot more of a personal
Isn't the only
story.
Special effect in the movie like a shot that has been reversed?
The Polaroid thing, he shakes it at the beginning where it goes backwards. Yeah, there's a couple of things. There's
I guess,
some cool,
sure.
There's
I mean,
cool
it has
stuff.
it certainly has a budget and a cast that's bigger than your typical indie film, which is one thing that I think is special about Nolan is he always gets these big actors to be in these, you know, intricately pieced together kind of entangled webs of fate, you know.
Right.
So he loves to use both character actors and big name actors, which is I guess might be part of the broad appeal. Following is certainly his more indie movie. Like he directed it, he wrote it, he shot it, I think he even edited it, right? Like so it's super independent. It's probably the reason why it doesn't have a Criterion release, I think.
Yeah, I think it does.
I think so.
Yeah, it's on Criterion, the channel.
Yeah. Can we talk real quick before we actually jump into the specific movies about like just his visual style real fast? Like,
go for it, Tyler. Say what you want to say.
I just his visual style is so strange. And if you're talking about auteurs, like I don't know, is this a progress episode or a provocateur episode, or is it a progressauteur? Should we call it that? Like when we're talking about the word auteur, like you think about obviously subtext and what the filmmakers usually trying to say throughout their filmography, but also like their visual style. And Nolan's style is so oddly specific. It's Spartan. His color palette is I mean, well, he's colorblind. I don't know if you knew that or not, but he's colorblind.
No.
So that's why his movies are always like slate and blue and brown, and like that's pretty much it. It's like and then like the cinematography in his films, especially earlier, like things like Memento and things like Insomnia, or especially Batman Begins, where he and Wally Pfister are just starting to kind of figure out what we want to do with film. It's always extremely functional. There's not a lot of fancy stuff. Even like today in Christopher Nolan's movies, you don't see like long takes or split diopters or any, crazy angles really.
Brian De Palma stuff.
Right.
Also,
there's
I have
Brian
to say,
De Palma.
If anybody mentions Wally Pfister, I have to say that he was the DP for Moneyball. I literally I rewatched it I've seen Moneyball at this point more than any other movie probably, but like I was like thinking about the cinematography of it, and I was like, man, I just love this. And then I was like, oh, this is Nolan's DP. Yep. Like how random.
Nolan's guy for 7 of 12 movies. So
yeah, the guy who
kind of dropped him, but
Dunkirk. How do you say Hoyt
van Hoytema? Yeah.
Thank you. He is like, oh my gosh. He's
a step up. He's never
The guy,
Yeah.
what's the guy from Revenant and Birdman? Lubeski?
Oh yeah, Lubeski, right?
He's never had him, right?
No. It's
Okay.
it's literally only been Wally Pfister and Hoyte van Hoytema.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe one day.
And Christopher Nolan himself on one movie. So on following.
Okay.
So,
Continue.
but I think like when he starts to step into the IMAX world, that changes his visual style. The Dark Knight, of course, is the first feature Hollywood blockbuster to be shot with IMAX cameras, at least in some scenes, which is a pretty big innovation. Like the very fact that we can go sit in a theater and watch Sinners, or go sit in a theater and watch Dune Part 2, and we're seeing these IMAX, 143:1 aspect ratios in a Hollywood movie in the IMAX theater. The very fact that we can do that is kind of because of Christopher Nolan. He sort of invents this idea in a way of using these cameras that were really like for nature documentaries or whatever, space documentaries, and taking them and using them for a movie. But I think if you pay close attention to the way, like, just look at the difference between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight specifically, like the way the camera moves, the way that the framing is wider, it's got more headroom. It kind of shifts Nolan's visual style to something a little smoother. You have all these less tightly framed single shots. There's more Steadicam than ever before, because they very rarely ever used any Steadicam. So I don't know. He's obsessed with like the analog and the functional. Like there's the thing about like all of any behind the scenes shots of Christopher Nolan that you see, he's always wearing his like little like Casio portable TV around his neck. It's like who wears that? He also
has no cell phone, and he
no
also
cell phones, no chairs, right? Isn't that a thing too? So
and I recently watched an interview where he was like, I don't want anybody to know anything about my private life or anything, because I don't want anybody thinking about me when they watch my films.
Right.
Well, like he doesn't want anybody. Well, but I'm just saying, like, that's like opposite somebody like Tarantino in my mind, where it's like the director wants to be very closely associated, where Nolan's like, please don't think about me when you watch this. Please just watch the movie. That's Wes Anderson is like the opposite of this, where it's just like you can't not think of Wes.
The
like
flash
it's impossible.
And the pizzazz
and the particularity of it is so loud.
Nolan is, I think, maybe trying to be anonymous. I don't think he's doing a very good job, because he's found himself a little bit, in a way, he's kind of his own Oppenheimer. Like he might not want to be thought of during the movie, but when I'm watching a movie like Oppenheimer for the first time, I'm sitting there thinking and parsing through, okay, why is Nolan doing this? And why is Nolan doing that? And why is
but
Nolan
you're not
this?
thinking of him as like a personality, though. You're only thinking of him in terms of his directorial, is what I'm saying. So to me is more like, if we're talking about like, is he an auteur? That is more to me in line with auteur, where you're literally just thinking as a director, not a person, like not who is Chris Nolan. We're not thinking about that or aware of it. It's just like, how is this movie different than his others? How do they compare? What is he focusing on?
Sure.
And I think that's more in line with that theory.
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. Okay. So we can start at Memento now, even though Tyler just confessed to me that he has not seen it since high school. So
I have not seen Memento since high school, but it's perfect because I don't remember anything about it. So it will be like you're talking to Leonard. You can be Teddy. You can be my Teddy. You can literally tell me anything. I'll just believe you. I'll believe whatever you tell me that happened in the movie.
Now, where was I?
I remember one line from this movie other than now where was I? And that's, do I lie to myself to be happy? And I think that's the key to that movie, I think, is and it's a key to a lot of Nolan's films, the sort of what would you say, the subjective understanding of truth, and it's kind of the relativity. I'm going to pull out a couple fancy $5 words here. I don't want everyone. Don't turn the podcast off, anybody, just because I'm going to pull out these words. Just the ontological concerns with epistemology. That's the key to Nolan's filmography. In other words, I'll explain the boundaries of human knowledge and how this kind of connects to how we act in our daily life, how we respond to objective reality. It seems to me that almost every Nolan movie focuses on someone who is kind of smothering objective uncertainties with their own subjective truth. Or at least the ideas that can push us forward through suffering and the reality of the world that we live in. Now,
are you just talking about denial? To me, this is just like you're talking about people who have certain pieces of information that they are not acknowledging, and so it's squashing the ability for like reality to come in because they're intentionally like making it so that they don't have access to the truth.
Isn't that what Lenny does to himself in
That's
Memento?
what I mean.
Yeah.
Right. I think you're right.
So there's a kind of, there is a relativity to truth that Nolan acknowledges. There's a perspectivism, the idea that there is an objective truth, but there's also the fact that we are stuck inside of our own perspective of that truth.
Okay. Yeah. But Memento goes a step further and says, okay, because what you just said reminded me of when like Teddy is like, hey, I took a picture of you when you killed, spoilers, when you killed your wife's killer. I took a picture of you and you were so happy. And then you forgot that you did it.
He's pointing at his like nipple.
Right. But there's like,
I do remember that.
Okay. He's so happy. And the point is that he sabotages his knowledge because if he doesn't have somebody to kill, he has no purpose, literally no purpose in life.
Yes.
So it's an intentional, it's okay. Like contrast that against Angier being like, why did you tie that knot? You have to know, I have to know, why did you do it? And that is different. These are two different types of obsession. One is an obsession where you're sabotaging your own self. And one is an obsession where there is no answer to your question and you have to let it go. Just like Cobb, there's so many characters in Nolan where they're obsessed with something that they just have to accept that they won't know. But this is different than that.
Okay.
End of speech.
I guess. So you seem to be separating perhaps the self from what? The society, I guess, or
I'm separating different types of
denial.
Of like you're doing it to yourself on purpose versus you just refuse to accept reality and you're like blindly moving forward. Because I'm trying to think. I mean, Oppenheimer to some extent is like this too. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think think of like the juxtaposition between Insomnia and The Dark Knight, right?
Okay.
At the end of Insomnia, what is Hilary Swank's character Ellie? I think Ellie, right? She is willing to
throw it in the river,
right? To preserve Pacino's legacy,
correct?
And he doesn't allow her to do it.
That's right.
Which is
don't
key
lose your
to
way.
His character's development, right? Don't lose your way.
Don't lose your way.
And that is the inverse of the ending of The Dark Knight.
And Memento.
And Memento, which is the noble lie, which is what we brought up in Tenet. And it's impossible to bring up. It's impossible not to bring it up in an episode on just Christopher Nolan in general, because he seems to be obsessed with this idea of the lies we are willing to tell ourselves to keep going, or to find meaning, or to find purpose.
Or like Commissioner Gordon, what does he say? This is not the hero we something like it's not the hero we deserve, or it's the hero we need.
It's the hero we deserve, or the other way around, or
something to the extent of like that this is further than just what I want to think about myself. This is like duty, or like you know what I mean, social responsibility, and so we accept that this lie has to be told. So yes, I understand the noble lie idea in that sense.
So speaking on duty, that is an example of deontology, which is the cause, not the end, right? It's this intrinsic motivation that comes from within, this deontological intrinsic motivation. Whereas this is kind of a tension between that duty, honor, the intrinsic
responsibility,
right, and oh my gosh, I always mess this up. The teleological, which focuses on the end rather than the cause. Like, it's the classic question: does the ends justify the means? Right. And so with The Dark Knight, you get that. With Inception, you get that. With Memento, you get that. Memento is the darkest of the bunch, I think. Would you agree with that? That he's willingly putting himself on a wild goose chase.
Not willingly, deliberately. Right.
I use the word willingly just because of, the idea of his will being in this and there being a will at all, right?
Right.
In the
it's like on purpose misleading his own self. It's almost like he's like his own villain or something. Mm-hmm. Like, and he knows that he can't find a way out. I mean, yeah, it is really the inverse of Insomnia, because in Insomnia, Will, Al Pacino's character Will, goes through quite a bit of guilt. Like, the whole movie basically is him like really in a conscientious state where he cannot, it's like Out Damn Spot, really, where he can't, that blood that keeps showing up, and that's something that is referring to that he did when he planted evidence and got that guy. And so there's all these moral conundrums where it's like, well, what would you do? What's fair? What's just? I'm preventing future harm, but he can't live with himself. Even though he mentally feels like he did the right thing there, it's clearly not the right thing because he can't stomach it. He knows it's wrong.
Yeah, like, and he tries to avoid it. I mean, when you get into those scenes where he's just straight up talking to Robin Williams' character and they're having these conversations and you're like, he knows that this is the killer and he's not arresting him right now because he's trying to save his own ass and he's trying to figure out a way to kind of cover himself. So he's compromising his investigation. He's compromising his ethics. And it's in a conversation with the devil, essentially. Or perhaps a shadow of himself, maybe.
I was going to say shadow, your favorite thing.
Exactly. And so for that movie to dangle the noble lie at the end and then redeem him, it plays into this larger conversation.
Because the Prestige, those guys are not really redeemed. I mean, like, Hugh Jackman's character is just sort of doomed, and and I feel like Nolan is a little bit obsessed with like dead wives, because there's for some reason
that's a wife guy's worst fear.
The crux, and he's definitely a wife guy. You're right.
Yep, Emma Thomas.
So I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. But that is the crux of the thing. It's almost like
wife guy auteurs. Okay,
name another
Baz
one.
Luhrmann.
Oh, okay.
Paul W.S. Anderson. These are all the Christopher Nolan is right in line with those guys.
I think it's hilarious that you know that. So Angier is just screwed from the get-go, and so he'll do anything, and he has no relief, is what I'm saying.
Angier is, the Prestige is just a terrible tragedy.
I know.
Angier is consumed with think about like the use of rope in that movie, the fact that his wife dies from a rope, right? Exactly. But then also the death later, the hanging that occurs later, the fact that he's, I don't know, where do you go with Angier, where he's attempting in some way to engineer the illusion of magic, and then he walks away from that because he literally can't figure out how Borden is doing what he's doing when it's actually so simple.
But Michael Caine says that to him. Right. He's like, it is. Yeah. He's like, it is very simple. And the thing is there's so many good lines about like that. Once you know the answer to a trick, it is not alluring anymore. The only reason that you're interested is because you don't know, and then you're going to be disappointed when you find out that it literally is just a double. But he also has like this like very strong yearning for real magic. Right. There's a whole thing of like that he is sort of obsessed, almost like Frankenstein.
Absolutely. Yeah. That difference between the trick and the secret is key to that movie, and it's it's an ingenious framing device And it, like, you know, it plays into the narrative, but it also plays into the movie is about the self, of course, but it's also in a weird way about making movies in a strange way. And it's like the sort of the great illusion of cinema itself, the things that we see, which is the trick, contrasted against the things that we don't see, which is the secret, the things that we think we want to see, which is the secret, contrasted against the things that we're not really looking for, which is the trick. And then the duality between Angier and Borden in this kind of competition of who can burn themselves down the fastest, essentially. But then there's also for your ego, basically.
There's also the whole thing of like where Michael Caine, you know, the whole thing with the bird where he's like, it's not enough. Yes. It's not enough to make it disappear. You have to bring it back.
Yes. Which is what I was going to say about Borden. I don't know that I agree with your analysis that they're both.
No, I think Hugh Jackman is doomed. I think Angier is doomed. Okay. But not
because Gordon. Sorry, are we
Gordon back in Dark Knight?
Borden gets to be his own Prestige.
Right.
He gets to return to his daughter in the end, and granted, he has to deal with the fact that his brother is hanged.
Yep.
Right. Which again, we're back to the rope again.
Yeah.
So he gets to return to his daughter, and in a way, The Prestige is much like The Dark Knight Rises, a resurrection movie.
I agree.
He resurrects his past mistakes, and he forges a better world because of it. And
Tyler, also that you just like brought the rope back. That's the whole thing. Fear is why you're failing.
Right.
Because you're holding on to the rope. You have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
No half measures.
That's pretty good.
That's right.
That's pretty good.
So, and I think the ultimate, like the last shot of The Prestige where he's returning to his daughter, it moves me so much because it's in that moment that I think Borden finally realizes, in all of this competition and this like self-immolation that has occurred over the course of the movie, Angier literally cloning himself into oblivion and killing himself over and over again. Not just metaphorically, literally.
No, literally.
All of that, you know, the tensions between Borden and his twin, all of it kind of comes crashing down to this realization that it's not the crowd's smile that's worth it. It's not my ego that needs to be fed. It's my child's smile that's worth it, right? So when you think about that in terms of its relationship to something like Inception, the ending of Inception being basically the same ending as The Prestige.
I was about to say that.
You know, this coming together in the face.
But it's also, I have to mention this, Tyler, because you made a brilliant point in your review of Inception that I think is very much worth highlighting, which is that when he walks in and he starts spinning the top, that Cobb does not look down to see what it is.
No.
Like he doesn't care about the answer. He at that point, it's just about like, if it's fake, I don't give a shit anymore.
Right.
And like, I didn't think about the fact that when he starts spinning it, he just walks off, and that we're the ones who see the, like, it sort of like, you know, toppling, but he doesn't care.
It's the teleology versus deontology, right? Do I care if I'm in the dream or do I care that I'm with my children? And this is something that has driven me nuts, is this ending of Inception that people, like, you remember in 2010 when that movie came out.
Oh, people were like, is it real or is it a dream?
It was all over the internet, and it still is today. It's like people will still bicker back and forth about this. And even Nolan I'm pretty sure Nolan himself has come out and said that it doesn't matter. And then people will say, well, that's just a cop-out. It's like, no, it's not. It literally is. It's not a cop-out if it's the point of the movie. If the point of the movie is that, I mean, to me personally, it's clear as day that he is in reality. Just because we are seeing the same exact image of the children that we've seen throughout the movie, that doesn't necessarily I mean, cinema has a language. You're allowed to bring back images and let them echo through your movie, right? So, like, I think he's in reality. I think that the totem is literally starting to topple. So, like,
yes, it is.
Why is this even an argument? Like, he's in reality, but the point is that he doesn't care if he's in reality. It's not if he doesn't, it's not the fact that he doesn't care that he's in a dream. It's the fact that he doesn't care if he's in reality or a dream, right?
Yes.
Thanks to his time in limbo, all that matters now is the look and the embrace and the touch of his children, real or not. And thankfully, as I said in my review, they're real. Why is this a conversation? Like, I don't get why people are so hyper fixated on this has to be where that line from Tenet comes from, that Nolan, I'm sure, made sure to put it in there. Don't try to understand it. Feel it.
Feel it.
Then it's perfect. So, yeah.
Okay. That's why I wanted to give you the space to say this, because I felt like that was very illuminating.
I've
even
been
though
holding a lot of space for that, so thank you.
I myself have never thought that it was a dream, but I will say, if we like contrast again to Batman Begins with this, what I like so much about Batman Begins and why I think it is so up there for me is because the way that Liam Neeson's character trains Bruce is actually to care a great deal about reality. It is literally to say, like, you need to face the things that you're really afraid of. We need to get to the bottom of it. And he is using we're not trying to hide anymore. We're trying to face things, confront them head on. And that's so much healthier than a lot of the ends of these movies. I mean, that is kind of, to me, the ultimate goal. And Batman Begins maybe is the only one that shows that. I don't know if you feel otherwise, but that is the one that has the most, like, face your fears, face yourself, really, like not in a surfacey sort of way. Otherwise you cannot move on. Like, you cannot progress.
All three of them are obsessed with this.
In the Dark Knight trilogy?
Absolutely. I think even though the Dark Knight focuses on Joker, it's like Joker is still a reflection of Bruce. So he's still battling himself in a way, and Harvey Dent is a reflection of Bruce as well. He's the White Knight, not the Dark Knight, right? So the Dark Knight Rises is the same thing. It's a constant becoming for Bruce Wayne and for Batman throughout this trilogy. I think it culminates the best in the Dark Knight Rises, personally, for me. I know you're more of a Batman Begins person. My favorite is The Dark Knight Rises, which is probably not the popular opinion.
I know, for both of us, actually.
For both of us. But, all three of them are pretty brilliant in what they're doing. Is this the Dark Knight trilogy part of the conversation? Can we actually just get in the weeds on this trilogy now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right. It's a trilogy about becoming. Batman Begins. Or as Michael Caine put in that one tweet, Batman Begin. I don't know if you ever saw that or not, but I think the first movie, it's interesting that it starts off the trilogy with a movie about fear, and specifically our response to fear and our utility of fear, being able in a way to integrate with that darkness that we are afraid of, and then using it, and how you use it that
so great,
matters, right?
And when he's like stands up, in the cave with I get like teary eyed and like chills when it's like he's, oh my gosh, that's, anyway, yes, that's a visual metaphor for that.
That's me whenever Bruce finally reveals himself to Jim Gordon at the end of Rises. I cry more in that moment than I cry in any Nolan movie, even more than in Interstellar, which is the most outwardly weepy of his films.
Good Lord.
That moment in Rises is, I don't know what it is about it, but it moves me a lot.
It's like integration. It's just like this. Yeah. It's the integration of self. It's just like everything coming together to make him whole. I don't know. It's very powerful.
We've talked about subjectivity with Nolan because it's something he's obsessed with. In this movie, Batman Begins, I'm curious what you think about fear's subjective kind of versatility or utility in the movie. So let me kind of lay this out and see what you think. So there's three villains in the film. There's Ducard, who is ultimately revealed to be Ra's al Ghul. There's Falcone. Is it pronounced Falcone or Falcone in this one? Because the other one, the Batman, I think, says Falcone, right?
Falcone.
Okay.
Yes,
And then
we're
this one is Falcone.
yeah.
All right. So they try to do the Michael Corleone. Which one is it? We don't know. So Falcone, and then there is Crane, Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow, right?
The
And
Scarecrow.
so
Alien.
Ducard and Falcone are kind of reflections of each other. So Ra's al Ghul uses fear against the city to maintain a new order for the better good. That's what he's attempting to do, right? Which is brought back in The Dark Knight Rises with Bane and Talia al Ghul. And we'll get to that later, obviously. But so there's this idea of using fear against the city itself for the better good, for a reset, a needed reset. Whereas Falcone is using fear for his own selfish interests, right? His own personal gain. And he's using fear against the city. That's what every mob boss does in a way. In a similar way, I think I view kind of Crane and Batman or Bruce as reflections of each other, in that they're both using fear for... So Bruce is using fear against criminals for the betterment of the city. And then Crane is using fear against criminals for what? His own sociopathic.
Yeah, I don't know what he's all about.
Like he's literally just a sociopath. And okay. the very fact that someone even crazier than the inmates is the one running the asylum is obviously part of the point, right? That things in Gotham are kind of upside down, and they're not really truly revealed to be upside down until we get to The Dark Knight, when we think everything is nice. We think everything is orderly. Batman is working and everything's great. And then the Joker shows up. And the Joker, of course, is a clown, and he's a symbol of the carnival. And the carnival is literally, when the carnival comes to town, it's supposed to be the upside down world, right? And so that's when everything turns actually upside down. But we get a little preview of that with Crane being the one who runs Arkham. So I'm curious what your ideas are. What do you think Nolan is working through here with like fear and its versatility, and specifically how this plays in the interplay between like justice and revenge and Jungian archetypes and the shadow? I mean, Bruce he joins a literal league of shadows. Are you kidding me? So gosh. So, okay, yeah. You talk.
No,
now.
I mean, it is impossible to answer that question. That is like 50 questions in a question.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, but I think that you're onto something in the sense that it is multifaceted, and I think that possibly every different villain that faces Batman shows him a different side of himself. The Joker is like, I'll get you to break your one rule. They're kind of serving
the Wicked Witch of the West there.
Yeah.
I'll get you, my pretty.
I'll get you, my pretty. Yeah, like I think that they serve to kind of force Batman / Bruce Wayne to grapple with different areas of himself that they are like bringing out in their uniqueness. Like the uniqueness of each villain and the uniqueness of the fears that they're dealing with causes Bruce to look at different areas of himself. Because everything, I mean, isn't that the classic thing with the comics that like Joker is literally the flip of the coin? Yeah. I mean, they're very, very, it's like Heat. I mean, Cop and Criminal, where it's like, it is, well, but you know what I mean? Like where it's Al Pacino and De Niro at the diner, and either of them could have been either of them if they had like gone another way. But they're so similar in personality. Mm-hmm. So that just depth of understanding, it's kind of frightening in a way. If you think about, like, if I think about my own self, how capable I am of going in another direction, like how thin that line is between good guy and bad guy, is what I think they're exploring.
That kind of idea that we're like 2 or 3 life disasters away from being willing to just throw everything away,
or that you don't know how you would, like, until Bruce is in that what would that be called, like a ceremony with the League of Shadows, and he's like, whoa, I can't do this,
right? Like,
and then he burns it down. He would not have known what he was going to do. And obviously Ra's al Ghul, I mean, he didn't know Ducard, he didn't know what he was going to do, because he would have never taken him up there if he thought that he was going to burn it down. So I don't know. It's like the interesting thing is the moment of crisis.
Yeah. Order is fragile. It's necessary, but it's very fragile because it exists on top of a base layer of the chaotic,
chaos,
the chaotic void, right? And so, getting a little theological here, but Bruce and Rachel, when they're kids in the garden of Wayne Manor, I think you know where I'm going to go with this, but and then of course, I've always been struck by Bruce falling, and obviously you have the fall of man,
and then
but
what do we do when we fall?
No one ever talks about what Bruce does right before that, which is he steals an arrowhead out of Rachel's hand. And so you have this kind of introduction of sin to these kind of innocent children. The arrowhead, of course, is kind of a symbol for, what would you say, violence. And then you have theft. And so you've got the introduction of sin, which then exposes Bruce to a layer of kind of subterranean fear that he did not, of course, as a pampered child of these rich people, never in a million years would have been exposed to. So I'm trying to think of a way. I'm kind of thinking out loud right now, but I'm trying to think of how all of this kind of integrates into the story. And I think
So then, what do you think the bats would represent in that way then?
Like just fear. That, I mean,
okay.
They only say it 100 times in the movie, the word fear, but
I know.
But I think there's something to this idea of, when Adam and Eve eat the apple and they fall, like Bruce falls, there is the result of that is the self-consciousness, the understanding that they are naked, right?
And the knowledge.
Right. And there's a reason why, like, say, I think I've actually brought this up before. There's a reason why people have dreams of, standing in front of a crowd naked, because you're standing in front of the judge. You're standing in front of the ideal. And when Adam and Eve come to this realization that they're standing before a God who is judging them,
they hide.
It introduces self-consciousness to humanity. And it's specifically our self-consciousness that allows for evil to be spread. The fact that we are self-conscious beings means that we can be willingly evil. And so evil enters the world. It's also interesting that in the Adam and Eve story, they are immediately afterwards condemned to toil and to work.
And to be in pain.
And to be in pain, right. Childbirth. Yeah.
Childbirth.
And you can kind of connect that in a way, like the birth of self-consciousness leads to, in a way, like the shrinking of our bellies and the growing of our heads. And there is literally an evolutionary arms race between the size of the human cranium and the size of the female cervix, which is why human beings are born. Like, you look at animals and, like, a deer is born and it can immediately walk, whereas a human, it needs a couple years still. So our gestational period is all out of whack because of that evolutionary arms race, because something happened in our development that caused this explosion of consciousness that separates us from the beasts of the earth. I'm putting quotation marks. Whether or not you think we're just another beast of the earth is up in the air. But I think so this idea of work and toil is important, because it's work is kind of no different than sacrifice when you think about it, because you're giving up something now for the future, right? You have to work the farm now in order to have a crop later, because we're talking about biblical stories that are coming from agrarian, pre-modern cultures. And so the next logical question would then be, what is the best possible sacrifice one can provide to the world or to God? And I think that's actually the center of The Dark Knight, is Bruce trying to figure out. I mean, he falls in Batman Begins, and then he goes through this whole journey, this kind of hero's journey of self-discovery, and he almost becomes Joe Chill. He almost becomes the person that killed his parents. He realizes that about himself, and he kind of self-exiles and finds himself and comes back and is reborn, and then is suddenly faced with the idea of sacrifice. And you see that over and over again throughout The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. What is the best possible sacrifice one can provide to the world? I think that's the center of literally it's the center of a lot of Nolan movies. It's the center of the next story, literally in the Bible. Cain and Abel is about sacrifice. Like, what's the best sacrifice, and how does that play into the arbitrary nature of the world? Why does God pick Abel's sacrifices instead of Cain's? And then why does Cain react the way that he does?
But maybe God doesn't choose anymore after this. Maybe it's us. I mean, I would imagine that it's not because like God chose Abel. It's because Abel chose something. Cain chose against it. I mean, there's arguments there of like, because otherwise there's no agency, right?
I've always viewed it as kind of legitimately. I've always just kind of viewed it as a representation of the luck of the draw. Is that some people have it and some people don't.
Tyler, no,
and Cain, he don't got it. So and then the way
you don't want it,
the way that maybe he doesn't, and maybe that's why he doesn't have it, right?
Exactly.
So there's that idea again, the intrinsic playing with the external, right? And so you see that playing out directly after the story of Adam and Eve. You also see it playing out in The Dark Knight. Batman taking on the sins of Harvey Dent in order to allow this lie, this noble lie, right? But
that's not a biblical model at all, though. Like, now we're getting out of the because that's not anything that.
Well, why? Why would you say it's not a biblical model? Because I have my own personal reason that there's something wrong with the noble lie at the end of The Dark Knight, which is why The Dark Knight Rises exists. That movie exists to contrast the ending of The Dark Knight. The whole entire movie is about how the noble lie is rotting Gotham away. But I'm curious,
and it also just doesn't work. It's not even logistically or practically speaking, it doesn't work. Bane's just like, no, we got to get rid of this. Like, this is causing. It's like a virus.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know that he's like also a psychopath, but I mean, he is saying like the truth needs to be out, and that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Is that this is what I was talking about with Mitch was that I don't believe that a power that is all goodness, such as God is, would need to use a lie in order to reach the goal that is the right one. Like, the only reason a lie would need to be used is because we are in like a fallen world, but that is not the trajectory of goodness to use badness.
If Bane is uncovering if Bane is uncovering the truth, right? And this is necessary. Bane is using the truth as a utility for what he truly wants. He's Bane. I mean, The Dark Knight Rises is a deeply political movie. Bane is a Machiavellian figure. He is presenting himself as unveiling the truth while he is unveiling the truth. However, he has ulterior motives. He has ulterior political motives.
Yes.
Specifically, the destruction of Gotham City via nuclear detonation, right? Which, if that tells you anything about how Nolan views that sort of political impulse, the idea that, Bane is saying all of the right things, the kind of the necessary progressive populist propaganda that he's pushing out, talking about like, the rich and the powerful deserve to be overthrown, and all of these things that just I think I put in my review that it dims people's perspective on just how nuanced the world really is, right? That people aren't envious of the wealthy's elite, the elite's money. because if being rich made you happy, then this whole trilogy of movies about Bruce Wayne, the most wealthy man in all of the movies, wouldn't exist if money made you happy. So people aren't envious of money, but they are envious or perhaps desperate, and perhaps rightly so, for the freedom that money gives you. And so the people of Gotham City feel like there is a kind of a sagging weight on top of them from the order that Batman has instilled in Gotham City under the weight of this noble lie. And it's amazing. The people, without knowing that it's a lie, can sense that it's a lie.
That's what I'm trying to say, though.
Yeah.
You know whether you acknowledge it or not, and also the truth doesn't lose any of its power, even if it comes out of the wrong mouth.
The issue is that Bane is a Cain-like figure, though. He is a prophet-like figure who profits on resentment and discord and rebellion and chaos, and he doesn't have any real freedoms to offer. He's actually putting Gotham in more shackles than they had before.
Okay, but if we're arguing about whether the truth needs to be told by the right person in order to be powerful, that's the only argument I'm making. Is it doesn't matter who it comes out of. A lie will never be above the truth, no matter who says it or for what their motivations are.
Which is where Batman's decisions come in at the end of The Dark Knight Rises.
Yes.
Because I'm saying that, yes, that is true, but what Bane is doing is not a good alternative. And I don't think, and Nolan doesn't think so either. And it's amazing to me that this movie from 2012 basically more or less just completely and totally predicted the populist politics era that we live in now. That's like you have the far left, and then you have the liberal left, and then you have the moderate right, and then you have the ultra conservative right? And so who's more popular? The super far left and the super far right. Because that's populist politics. And it's fascinating to me that The Dark Knight Rises was able to, in a way, kind of sense this coming, which makes me wonder if the people of Gotham can sense that there's a lie that's sagging over them. Perhaps Nolan senses the same thing as well and is able to kind of tap into this understanding that, people are longing for this truth.
Yes.
Now, again, the problem is Bane presents the truth. It's just that it's all surface level. Bane isn't he's not actually pushing for, he's not Lenin. He's not Bernie Sanders. Okay. He's not pushing for a populist revolt where Gotham's like Marxist proletariat can thrive, because they don't. And also that's usually how that goes anyway in any revolution, right? Just read A Tale of Two Cities and get back to me, right? But Bane is using the ease with which the masses can be manipulated and moved politically by like rhetoric and by temptation. Again, he's Cain-like in a way. And it's all for this kind of re-emergence, this resurgence of the League of Shadows, where integration with your shadow goes wrong. And I think that's what the League of Shadows kind of symbolizes is there's a reason why Bruce has to burn it down in Batman Begins.
Yes.
There's
a reason why it doesn't work. I mean, there's a reason why they're bad guys.
Right.
Like so much of what he is taught there is not bad. Mm-hmm. If anything, that's what I'm kind of saying. Is that actually I think that the best advice comes from Liam Neeson's character, comes from Ducard. I really think that and that's kind of what I was trying to say about like that thin line, that the closer that we are to being able to proclaim like truth, like capital T truth, as David Foster Wallace says, like actually the truth, not a truth, we become in danger of like delusion, of not being able to see certain things. And then we're really dangerous because there's just enough in there to be able to move people and to sway people. But then if you're missing certain components of that, you can be a villain like that.
Yeah.
And Batman's ability to discern what is missing is what makes him a hero. just even if he's not like completely aware of what those nuances are,
right?
He's able to see further on than they are.
It's Batman's spirit needs to be broken. It has to be broken. And I know people levy complaints against The Dark Knight Rises that, it's a movie where you're forced to watch Batman be reborn twice. It's like he has to come back at the beginning, and then he immediately gets his back broken, and then he has to redo it all over again and come back again. And it's like,
yeah, but those are two totally different, like reborn.
They're totally different.
Those are totally
he's physically
different.
broken at the beginning, not spiritually broken. And then
he says, what does Bane say? Like, I want your soul.
I want your body and your spirit. I mean, Bane literally, like,
he's like, I didn't bring you down here to break you physically.
Exactly.
I don't know what's going to go first, but I'm after your soul.
Exactly.
Like, that's what he says.
And it all leads, coincidentally enough, I mean, Bane actually kind of screws himself over with this, as every villain tends to do, where, he wants to torture Bruce by having him watch Gotham fall apart, and he doesn't realize.
Then he just breaks the TV.
Right? Yeah, he doesn't realize that Bruce's strength comes from that.
Yes,
that kind of taunting in a way, and it leads.
Okay, I have to tell you this before I forget, because sometimes you say things and I'm like, I got to interject it now. So this conversation is probably very chaotic, but I just watched a video where Michael Keaton was with Jack Nicholson talking about being Batman.
Oh my god!
So this is relevant. And he was like, at the end of the speech, he was like, I got a lot of hate mail from you guys. I've gotten a lot of letters that have said that I suck at this and I should never have been Batman. I should never agreed.
That's crazy.
And he was like, I want you to know, keep them coming, baby, because I love no.
Yes, that's the spirit of Bruce Wayne, right?
He's like, I love for you to tell me no.
Yeah, that's why he was such a good Batman. That's why he was such a good Bruce Wayne. So I don't think there's ever been a bad Batman. I'm not talking about the movies, but I just mean like the actors. I think they've all been. I mean, maybe Clooney is kind of at the bottom.
Okay.
Because he's kind of on autopilot in that movie. But like, I think Kilmer is incredible. He's doing things in that movie. Yeah. I mean, obviously I think the Batman is the Batman. It's my Batman movie. I think the Dark Knight trilogy is incredible and there's a lot of great stuff in it, but the Batman is special. It's
transcendent.
Yes, that's it.
For you.
Yeah.
Right. But my point is that I'm saying that with a personality like Bruce has, just innately, you're right that Bane taunting him is actual. It's the opposite of what his intended outcome is. Just like I'm saying with Michael Keaton, where he's like, "You tell me no, and I want to do it."
Right.
So it backfires in that sense because he thought that would. I mean, he's like doing push-ups and like pull-ups and push-ups in the cell. So this guy is not at all discouraged. That is not the way to go about that. I think Rachel's death was like the thing that kind of broke him in that way. So he's just not broken in the way that like the villain uses.
Right.
And Joker too. I think Joker couldn't break him either.
Well, Bruce has his own noble lie that he's dealing with when Alfred reveals to him that he burned that letter from Rachel.
The letter.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he himself is suffering under the sagging weight. And
that was also a lie. Lies are not good, Tyler. If anybody wants to know that's the summary here. Don't lie.
They can be. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know where I stand on it.
No.
I think there's a slow rot either way. But once we start treading into like ethical territory, I don't know. No. I'm too blurred to be able to
just tell me the truth. Yeah. If anybody's listening to this and you know me at all, to always tell me the truth, always. And I really strive for this, and it's sort of like almost, I don't know, because it's so autopilot easy. That's like back to like the This Is Water thing, the DFW thing. Like the default mode is to hide, is to not tell the truth, is to act like you're justified in not doing it. And all you're doing is becoming a liar. I mean, it's very, I don't know. I see this as very black and white. So maybe that's why I like Batman.
You want to hear some truth from me?
Yeah, go for it,
okay.
Tyler.
Suffering is the only way through.
Yes.
Suffering is essential. The leap of faith in The Dark Knight Rises. There's a reason why the prison literally looks like the well that little Bruce Wayne falls into, and he doesn't have his dad, literally God, the father. The death of the death of the father is the death of God, right? He doesn't have his father anymore to come down and save him and say, why do we fall, right? That hell has to be confronted again, and the suffering that he undertakes is literally necessary for resurrection, for rebirth. It's the same suffering that Bane is confronted with, because Bane comes from the same hell. He is this mysterious, we don't know what his origins are. He just kind of materializes out of this hellscape. But Bane can't comprehend suffering. That is why he's utilizing this very kind of postmodern, post-structuralist, post-truth world to his own benefit, right? And he thinks he's doing it for the better benefit of everybody, resetting Gotham City by annihilating it. Very, very similar to the villains of Tenet, of let's just annihilate everything because it's all gonna fall apart anyway, right? Whereas the protagonists of Tenet, one of whom is literally named the protagonist, they look at suffering, and they look at the mode of being, the world that we live in, and the fact that this anomaly of suffering exists, and they look at it and they say, yes, that we will take that and we'll use it, and we will commit ourselves to the heroic impulse.
Which is the same thing that Matthew McConaughey says. I mean, if you this is exactly there with Matt Damon. Matt Damon is like, screw it.
And I know it's a little on the nose, but Matt Damon's character being named Dr. Man is like, this is man's worst impulses come to life. He's a coward, and
he's just ready to like have everything be extinct. It's total clean slate. Like, let's just wipe it out.
What's weird about him is weirdly enough, he's kind of like almost a HAL 9000 figure, even though he's not,
but he's more emotional,
right? But I mean, I just mean like he is actually trying to push the mission forward.
Yes,
and so in a weird way, he's actually trying to save humanity at the cost of all of these other astronauts who just came in and woke him up, and like, but he's doing it in such a horrific way. Like, he's willing to, kill all of them or do whatever he has to do in order to say, again, like in Insomnia, or that,
I was thinking Thanos.
Like in Insomnia specifically, Pacino's character trying to save his own ass. He's trying to save his own ass, and you can't have both. You can't do both, right? And I think that's kind of what Interstellar is about. You can't. Sacrifice is sacrifice, and so there's a reason why, like, the space shuttle is the Endurance, right? If we are going to survive, if we are going to endure, it's going to take sacrifice. And the sacrifice that Cooper has to deal with in the film is essentially losing his children. And it is horrible to watch. I know you're not a huge Interstellar fan.
/ The Martian 2.
So, right. but you can do you at least find the gravitational time dilation stuff where it's just this, they come back to these messages. There's a reason why on the internet it has literally become the meme of devastation. That shot of McConaughey crying is like true devastation. Like, he's lost so much time. There's that great quote from Interstellar that's, I'm not afraid of death, I'm afraid of time, right? And that, by the way, that's one thing that we failed to mention about Nolan.
Time.
Time, but also, like, all of his characters speak in thematics.
I know.
Which
it's so annoying.
I love it. But you remember when I was watching The Dark Knight and I was literally trying to fight that movie. You remember this?
You were like,
I was like, why is this happening? What is going on?
Why is this going on?
Why is anything
happening?
No,
but you were like saying, why does this even make sense plot wise? Like, you were frustrated with like maybe it's an inconsistency.
I was actively, it was like I was like white blood cells attacking like an infection of some sort. And I was trying everything I could to beat The Dark Knight down. And I don't know why, because I like Christopher Nolan and I like The Dark Knight. So when I was watching, I'm like, something grew in me that was like, what is going on? And I was trying to be smarter than the movie. That's the problem. And it's not very smart to try and be smarter than Christopher Nolan, because he like I said, hermetically sealed. He puts these things together with care and effort. Anyway, that was a tangent about
you're
the
supposed
thematics.
You're supposed to feel it, Tyler.
I know. And I do with Interstellar, and I'm sad that you don't. I think one of the reasons why you had mentioned that it's too optimistic.
It's more that. Well, no.
Can we dig into this? We've barely even touched The Dark Knight. I feel like that's bad to do in a Christopher Nolan episode, but I feel like this is a more important conversation to have. The Dark Knight speaks for itself, right?
No, I think it's not that it's too optimistic. It's that it's this idea that like we can save ourselves that I don't like. Okay, that like man is replacing God in Interstellar.
So it's not that it's optimistic, it's that it is naive in its optimism.
Yes, and almost like dangerous, and it's in saying that like the voices that we hear and them is us. Like we have it within ourselves to save ourselves is what I'm against. Yeah. So because I know that doesn't work.
I read a review of Interstellar that linked to a YouTube video. I'm sorry, I don't remember who wrote this review. I wish I could remember, but they linked a YouTube video that was talking about how there's a lack of God in Interstellar, right? Maybe that has something to do with the fact that it was partially written by a theoretical physicist, but but all of that aside, I was looking at this video and I'm just like, I went to the comments and somebody was talking about the kingdom of heaven and heaven and how like the physics of heaven and how time works in heaven, and they were talking about it with such confidence, like this is how this would work if heaven is real, and this is how time works in heaven, and why doesn't Interstellar do this and that? Why is the kingdom of heaven? Why is God not a factor in Interstellar? I couldn't take it. I closed it out.
I'm not saying that though.
What is this? We say Interstellar is optimistically naive. What is this like? Just lunacy. What is this lunacy of just what are you talking about? How time works in heaven? Isn't the whole entire point of heaven like when heaven meets earth? Isn't that supposed to be the thing? Like, and isn't that the kind of the point of Interstellar is we are leaving earth, and so we're what. I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around. But
it's because you're focusing on a different thing than I am. That's where I think you're getting lost.
Maybe I'm hyperfixating on some random person on the internet who I shouldn't, but
rando on the internet.
You don't think it's beautiful that he is her ghost? He literally says at the beginning of this, once you're a parent, you're the ghost of your children's future. And maybe it's because my wife is about to give birth to a child, but like this viewing of Interstellar in particular just rattled me.
No, but I think that's what I texted you. I was like, this is different when you're becoming a parent or when you're going to be a parent. I mean, obviously, and it's a dad and a daughter, and like I'm not trying to denigrate.
This is a crazy Interstellar conversation.
Martian too. But like the main thing for me is that like in the sense of that we can figure it out and we can lead ourselves. That's the only thing. And like, I don't need God to be in every movie, but I don't like the idea that like we can determine our own destiny in that sense.
I guess what I'm trying to say. I just don't know what people want.
What do you want?
Literally, do they want it to be the cover of the Ninth Configuration with the astronaut looking at the Christ on the cross?
Yeah, that's a great example.
I know, and that's an iconic poster, and it works for what that movie is doing. This movie is not trying to do stuff like that. It is
exactly.
I'd say this: there's two sides of the climate crisis. Okay. And yes, we're bringing this up. We're going to talk about this. Oh my gosh. Okay? Tyler, no. On the one hand, you have the anti-natalist, scientist, rational doom and gloom. That is, the climate is dying. We are causing it. We should it's rust coal. We need to walk hand in hand into extinction because human beings are a cancer on the planet, right? That is not a productive way of looking at things.
Nihilism.
That is nihilism, okay? And also, by the way, it completely doesn't even register the fact that, okay, if we are the reason why our planet is burning away, if it's purely on us, if it is 100% human manufactured, what caused that? How about science and progress? Those are the things that caused it, right? So
what's the flip side of this? There's two views.
Yeah, so that's
okay, what's the
first view. The other view is the pro-natalist scientist optimism. And I think I tend to fall more in that camp than I do gravitate more towards that. Oh God, am I getting older right now? Oh my God, wrinkles. I tend to gravitate more towards that than I do the other side, which is the idea that you can put quite a bit of faith in human ingenuity. And it's because we have been gifted, whatever you want to say. Was it from God? Was it a monkey that accidentally ate a mushroom that caused us to elevate our consciousness? I don't know what all the theories that you can throw out as to why we have an elevated sense of consciousness, right? I don't care what the answer is, but there's a lot of faith that you can put into human ingenuity. Both of these views, though, are rooted in the scientific project. And science.
Okay, so you're saying that you like Interstellar because it embraces your natural proclivity towards a certain ideology.
No, don't put it that way.
This is confirmation bias.
Put it that way. I'm just saying that, you know, science is multifaceted. It's a part of human existence that in a way seeks to control and harness the natural world and protect us from things that we might not want to be exposed to. And yet Interstellar, even a movie like Interstellar, which, like I said, it's partially written by a theoretical physicist, and it has all of this scientific optimism. It has all of these things, and yet isn't it science that is failing us on Earth in the movie? So I don't know. I just view, you know, Interstellar has there's a little bit more going on there than people give it credit for, and
namely me.
It's got all the hallmarks of Nolan, the kind of the cyclical, you know, narrative,
and the score is awesome.
The score is great. That's what I was really torn on this recent viewing because I don't do half stars, so I was 4 or 5. And I was listening to Zimmer's score on my phone as I was trying to figure it out, and I was like, it's a 5 for the score. The score pushes it. It might be a 4-star movie, but that score makes it a 5 for me.
Okay, I'm gonna force you out of this because this is a good transition into Dunkirk. I think Dunkirk is actually my favorite, besides like the Dark
Nolan?
Knight. My favorite score. Like the.
Okay.
You know, the ticking
the
clock
tone.
And then I love the gravitas and magnitude of the Oppenheimer one too. Actually, Oppenheimer's score is by the guy who did Sinners, right?
It is Göransson.
Pretty sure. Yeah, those are the same.
He did Tenet and Oppenheimer.
And Tenet. We've already talked about Tenet. We're not talking about Tenet. So we're gonna skip to Dunkirk, but I think that Dunkirk is an outlier and maybe will be more like the Odyssey than perhaps any of these others, in the sense that it is about like how Dunkirk really is how humanity affects one another more than it is about anything else. Like if you want to talk about optimism, I mean, Dunkirk is just the spirit of like, human beings are good and can do good things and can help one another and can prevent, like, do these miraculous. So that one to me is the one that feels better than Interstellar for me, in that vein, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I woke up this morning like horribly nervous to record a podcast episode on Christopher Nolan. And because how do you do that? And
We
then
still don't know.
so I have this treadmill in my living room, and I put it in front of my big giant OLED TV, and I turned on Dunkirk, and I ran for about an hour as I was watching Dunkirk, because I've seen Dunkirk enough. I wouldn't like do that if I hadn't seen the movie before, but I've seen Dunkirk I think 3 times before this morning's viewing, and whew, that got me. It was
Pumped you.
It was yeah. Oh, I was like, I'm ready to record now. I can do this. Like, yeah. It is speaking to that optimistic impulse. That is, and you mentioned the Odyssey. The Odyssey going to be it'll be an interesting kind of inverse of this movie, because Dunkirk is about home coming to you and saving you, whereas the Odyssey is
but
about.
I think there will be more parallels going home, right?
Yeah.
I just think in the spirit of it, I think I'll end up being like, this is closest to Dunkirk. Maybe not.
The Odyssey
but
I can see being more of this journey home. It's still similar. I don't know that the Odyssey is going to be the most optimistic movie ever, because Odysseus is war torn, and he's the one who comes up with the Trojan horse idea that is kind of the impetus of the entire Greek army utterly annihilating Troy in the most horrific ways, and then being punished by the gods because of it, and being, cast into a crazy, exile for 10 years, and coming home. And then when he gets home, taking out all of those internal, struggles with who he is and what he has unleashed in the world, and then just essentially taking it all out on the suitors. Whether that's just or not is an interesting question, but that's going to be an interesting one from Nolan. Dunkirk being the kind of the inverse of that, with homecoming to them. It's a deeply subjective experience, obviously, the movie, right? Land, sea, air, you're cross-cutting the 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour. Of course, the best part of the movie is Tom Hardy in a Supermarine Spitfire with a mask and garbled, obscured voice. I love that he was
mask
able to
yet
do
again.
That. Right.
Yeah.
But so
and you only see his face once, just like Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah. I think I prefer the air sequences, but the sea sequences, none of them work without the other, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
You need the mole in order for the sea to work, and you need the sea in order for that emotional moment with the mole to work. But
the Mark Rylance bit is, I love that part, where it's
so
just like
good.
bringing it into a smaller scale, where it really feels like heroic. That's when it feels
the way
most.
that the sea is intersecting with the air sequences and the mole sequences is just phenomenally edited together. Did that movie win Best Editing?
Yes, it did
at the Oscars. I hope to God it did.
No, it did, and it didn't win Best Picture though. And Oppenheimer is the only one where he finally was just. It's just like, okay, let's give it to him, please.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where he deserved it sooner than that. But Dunkirk is like, I mean, just like from a cinematic perspective, it's so immersive. Seriously, and it's so powerful, and like you just get chills, and it's like the fact that it actually occurred. It does contribute to it, but I mean, the whole time I was watching, I was just like, no one could have made this.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. That's the sense of like, maybe that's like a Nolan stamp, is when you're watching stuff, you're like, no one else could have made this.
Who else could
have
possibly done this? Yeah,
there is no one.
And I've heard, the movie gets a lot of flack for its cross editing and the timelines. It's like Nolan at that point up his own ass the most he had ever been, and I remember hearing that critique. What else would the movie be if it was told like chronologically and it was over the course of 1 week, and basically like 80% of the movie would be the mole, and then the last 20% would be the sea and the air. I mean, but it's not going to work.
This is like a trend though, in like, I've noticed this in like HBO shows and stuff, where things are just not sequential. So it can feel
irritating.
That is irritating because it's gimmicky.
They're not. Christopher Nolan is the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things now where it's like it starts at the end or you're thrown in the middle, and it's only
that's the Yale streaming algorithm thing
to
that
get you interested.
We got to start at the end in order to make sure the audience sticks around for another 5 to 10 minutes.
Exactly.
And that's I'm increasingly horrified that's how films are sometimes being kind of managed by this sort of algorithmic. I mean, thankfully, Tom Cruise this summer is going to save us from the algorithm, the entity. So I think it'll all work out in the end. But
and he's definitely a linear narrative guy. He is not interested in like throwing us off or starting at the end. Like the MI.
Remember when Tenet came out and Cruise and McQuarrie went to go see it and they had their like masks on and
masks
stuff.
and popcorn.
Yeah. What a time to be alive. So
I know. I just saw him with like a ticket of sinners, and it was just like this huge smile on his face.
Yes, yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think all of the talk of Dunkirk connects us to. We can finally bring time in to the conversation because Nolan is obviously obsessed with time.
Yes,
he himself has discussed that. I mentioned this earlier that there's a feeling of being trapped within subjectivity that he seems to be processing a lot in his films, and I think a lot of that has to do with how we as a people are trapped within a subjective view of time. What is it that Kierkegaard says that life can only be understood backwards? We're forced to live it forwards, right? And that, I mean, if ever there was a line that explained the movie Tenet, that's the movie Tenet in a nutshell right there. But also Kierkegaard has another role to play in this conversation because of how often Nolan uses the leap of faith, right?
Yeah.
The act of kind of surrendering yourself to something outside of the bounds of reason. Okay. I'm not talking about someone making a YouTube comment about how time works in heaven. I'm talking about something deeper than that. I feel like even that is too surface level, like religiosity stuff. There's a deeper spiritual element to the leap of faith than just believing in heaven. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's like baby stuff. I'm sorry. I don't mean to put
like
it that way.
Spiritual awakening.
I don't mean to be like, arrogant in that way, but I just, we have to dig deeper. We have to go deeper if we want to go with Inception's idea of
Inception.
things. But so this non-linear narrative storytelling kind of plays into a broader understanding of time and entropy, that things fall apart, right? And that is it requires a leap of faith from our subjective understanding of the world to an objective reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the truth, the capital T truth.
That truth.
Requires a leap of faith. There's a chasm between our subjective perspective of time and the fact that there's an objective reality around us. And Nolan is on record saying literally that requires a leap of faith, and that is.
But that is also what Oppenheimer does, Tyler. Like, I mean, if you think about the way that that's structured too, mm-hmm. we are like the whole thing of like the committee and and all of the questioning and everything is literally trying to get at that truth in non-chronological order. We've got the black and white. He even has the titles again, the fusion and fission. And
of course.
So, I mean, he's always trying to, I know that his goal is to get as close to what happened as possible. And the way that he does that is by jumbling it up. But in a way, it's like that's more accurate.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, he was in interviews when Oppenheimer was doing its press tour. He was outwardly saying that the movie is balanced between objective scenes and subjective scenes. That the
like the emotional ones with the women versus is that what you mean? Like the personal ones versus
so the movie's split between color and black and white. And supposedly
just like Memento.
The color sequences are from the perspective of Oppenheimer. And he literally wrote the screenplay in first person. For those sequences, at least. I haven't read the screenplay, but and then the black and white sequences are supposed to be more objective. Now, the problem with that is this: Fission and fusion are the titles of those different sequences. It is easy to assume that the whole entire movie is about J. Robert Oppenheimer because the movie is called Oppenheimer. But you and I both know that the movie is actually about two men and their differentiated downfalls and the sort of
just like the Prestige,
right? Exactly like the Prestige. It is the crumpling fission, the implosion of one, and the explosive fusion of the other, right? And so
I wonder if this is like Christopher versus Jonathan. I have always thought this. Like with the Prestige,
he
I was
his
like,
brother Jonah, doesn't he?
Okay, well, whatever.
No, Jonathan Nolan. But
but you're right.
Yeah, I just always thought it was funny that he calls his brother the name of a biblical character who swallowed into the abyss, and you get the idea. But
yeah, no, right, no, yes, and then he's got Christ in his name, so
right. Hello,
but I'm just saying, like, there's a sibling rivalry.
Doing amazing stuff here.
Christ versus Jonah. And then it just keeps coming up and coming up and coming up, you know, where it's like this sibling rivalry. Also, though, I mean, what did I tell you about the Prestige? Like, this is about a double life. Mm-hmm. There's this obsession with doubles, and obsessions with, like, you know, I mean, Batman's this way too. Just like the flip sides of the coin. He also honestly has an addiction thread in so many things. Yes. I mean, and in Oppenheimer, it's like sex addiction almost. Like he's a womanizer, and like there's this thread of like him being completely unable to control that part of himself, which I think is very interesting. And then like in Inception, grief is the addiction. I mean, and in Memento as well. So there's all of these very interesting like internal impulses that are out of control, as well as the external ones that they're sort of battling at the same time.
That is a good way to put it. I think that both Oppenheimer, if we're still on the topic of Oppenheimer, both Oppenheimer and Strauss, who, if you couldn't catch it earlier, was the other man that we were talking about, who the movie is about. Both of them, I think, realize, I think the key to that movie, and this I only caught this on the second time I saw it. The key to that movie is when both of those men suffer the realization that they are not the center of their little self-imposed reality, right? Mm-hmm. You've got the scientist who's taken apart by his own atomic creation, right? By his own ethical qualms, his own monster, very Frankenstein, right? And in a way, that's also going to connect to the Odyssey, because again, Odysseus is the one who comes up with the Trojan horse idea, and it takes him apart slowly but surely.
We are our own downfall, exactly. Tyler.
Then you have the politician, Strauss, who is taken apart by his own hubris and his own resentment against Oppie and his own kind of vindictiveness, right? And I think so. The key to each of those understandings of why the movie is split between these two perspectives is the scene with Harry Truman and the scene with Albert Einstein at the very end. So the scene with Harry Truman, when he goes in there and his moral misgivings about his ethical problems with the bomb and his warnings of where the bomb is going to be taken by the political reality that exists in the world, is completely obliterated in a single moment by Truman, who just looks at him and says, "Do you think anyone in those countries where the bomb was dropped gives a shit about who built the bomb? They only care about who dropped it. And I'm the one who did it." Right? And in a way, that's true. In a way, that is true. And it completely takes Oppenheimer apart. It's like, this is it's his curse. This is his punishment. He's relegated into exile after he does this, what's supposed to be a symbol of progress, scientific progress, the creation of the bomb, right? It's supposed to win the war, but then he has to deal with this Prometheus-like punishment I mean, there's a reason why he's the American Prometheus, right? It's this sort of long mythic sentence of embarrassment and punishment. And then you've got the Einstein scene. Strauss, the whole movie is obsessing. He's obsessed
just
about
like Angier.
what did these two guys, what were they talking about me? Like, what were they saying about me? And then at the end, you actually hear the conversation, and it's not about Strauss at all. Of course not. It's not about. It's like, what was the line from Einstein? It's something like when they have when they've punished you enough, they'll serve you like salmon and salad, or I don't remember the exact words, but they'll make speeches about you, and they'll give you a medal, and but it won't be for you, it will be for them. It's like they're propping themselves up by giving you the glory finally, but you have to suffer first for what you did, and that's the whole entire movie in one nutshell, basically. And
it's literally the same thing with Moneyball. Billy Bean is like, nobody cares if you don't win the last game. Like and also that, like, they may remember the game, but they won't remember they don't care about. Like, we're all striving in ways that are so counterproductive, like for ends that nobody experiences.
Right.
And even the people, like, like I watch a lot of athlete, like my TikToks, all like the algorithm for that is whatever it is. But like I watch a lot of athletes who talk about like getting to the peak, the pinnacle of whatever whatever you're describing that Oppenheimer couldn't get. People have gotten that. And then they're like, yeah, it's nothing. I mean, you have so much feedback from the other side of success that are telling you like, hey, if you're looking for this and you get it, if you happen to get it, it is not what you want. It is not enough. It doesn't satisfy. So it's amazing that like we are still so fascinated by that
literal line from Oppenheimer. The bigger the star, the more violent its demise.
Its demise.
Yeah. So like the greater our achievements, the worse their consequences in a way.
But the worse we're going to feel about ourselves, because you can't reach a point of like, that satisfaction.
There's what is this constant upward trajectory that we're looking for, right? It's a constant striving to become better. It's the becoming that I was talking about earlier. And so in terms specifically of Oppenheimer and Interstellar and Tenet and all of these science-driven movies that Nolan has kind of become obsessed with recently, kind of give me just 1 second to take this tangent, because I want to talk about like the boundaries of progress and the boundaries of science. So they move hand in hand, and they are aimed at similar things. Again, I mentioned this earlier: to control nature, to control suffering, to conquer death. What's medical science, right? Well, why do we take medicine? And in a sense, to bring happiness to humanity.
Yeah, also to avoid pain, I was going to say,
right.
or to...
Which the opposite of that would be happiness. But the problem is happiness isn't the pursuit of life. That's not the goal.
It's also not the absence of pain.
It's not that, right, exactly. And that shouldn't be the goal of life. And I tell my students this all the time, is like, don't try to be happy, try to be responsible, and you'll find meaning in your responsibility. And when you find meaning, then you might find a little bit of happiness, because happiness is fleeting. It's fleeting. It's also you'll be happy. Feeling. You'll be happy for 2 weeks, and then you'll break your leg, and you're not. So suffering is just a constant. We're striving against suffering constantly. So if you want to go back to the very beginning of the scientific movement and this age that we live in, the age of enlightenment, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I kind of want to break this down. So Francis Bacon.
I get comfortable in my chair.
Well, I promise it'll be quick. I just am working through these ideas to kind of reconnect them back. Francis Bacon is sort of the father of modern science, a friend of Shakespeare, a contemporary of Shakespeare, but he's over here doing scientific experiments while Shakespeare's over there writing the most brilliant tragedies. And Shakespeare's kind of the poet, the poet to Bacon's more kind of rationalist scientific ideas in a way. So Bacon sought to kind of reconstruct philosophy as an instrumental good for humanity. And in a way, that makes him kind of Machiavellian. Again, he's using something as a tool in a political way. So what is the aim of science? It's to understand the structure of nature, and not to know. It's not to know what nature is. It's not to understand the laws of nature. It's to reveal the laws of nature so that we can then reshape them to our desires. Again, to conquer death, to bring happiness, to avoid pain, to control nature and suffering and things like that.
Longevity.
Right. So that's the ultimate aim of science, and no one ever talks about that. It's reshape. It's not to just, we don't just know things scientifically and be like, ha, we know that now. It's like, no, well, how are we going to use that to make things better, to progress, right? Which is the
So how are you tying this back, Tyler?
That's the whole point of Oppenheimer, is the root of the entire scientific project with which we build the modern world around us is literally seeking to unravel the secrets of the universe and to convert our life, or life in general, into the kind of the raw materials of this sort of utopia that we think we might be able to build. But if we know anything about anything and the way that humans work, utopias don't last forever, right?
No.
And so the unraveling of those secrets of the cosmos, of God, of whatever it is that you want to say, it brings great consequence, right? And it can be dangerous. And so I think that's the heart of the sort of modern Nolan project, is untangling those issues of, again, what is this constant upward trajectory that we seek? Is it the self? Is it societal? What works best? Me personally, I think that, our world is flooded a little too much with people who want to fix society before they actually fix themselves, right? Which is a famous Leo Tolstoy quote, but it's famous for a reason, because it's true, capital T, right? So I think Nolan is very split on this idea. He's looking at things from, again, the subjective and the objective, the intersection of those things, and where does humanity fall on this spectrum? People. How do people respond to the basic objective suffering that exists around us, right?
But it's also like heavily motivated by survival. I mean, there may not even be like these lofty idealizations at the end of the day. This is like we're here because we need to exist.
Yeah, I don't even think the stuff that I'm saying they aren't the lofty ideals. They're what's underneath everything. They're not above, right. They're underneath. And it's like, right. People haven't dug through the dung deep enough to get to them. And so right. I just think, Nolan is way, way deeper than anyone gives him credit for, of course. And he is attempting in some way to kind of reconcile these things. And
that might be why he works, though, Tyler, because he is actually like not in a showy way or a very obvious way, but he is speaking to depth within us that resonates, whether we're aware of it or not. I mean, it's almost like his movies are towards our subconscious. So we know that we're having fun and we're having a good time,
right.
And there's good quality and good actors. But at the end of the day, it's obviously doing something more. I mean, we could say like the average American especially are not like, they don't have tremendously high standards. I'll try to be nice about this, but because like there's so much crap. So we could say like dumb. It's a reflection of, what people like, that they just want to check out. But I think with Nolan, it is more than like reality TV does for like bored people who are overworked and tired. It's also just like on a grander scale, speaking to us in ways that maybe we're not even aware of, about like greater truths of the universe or of ourselves. And then that's why they work.
Working on our unconscious, working on our subconscious through that kind of
a dream within a film within a film within a
exactly.
It's the layers of which he is speaking to us.
It's all about symbols.
And it's all about the prestige. It's kind of like what you said, where you're like, it's also about filmmaking. It's he's also giving us like an Oz behind the curtain moment there, maybe. into his own process, which he's also fascinated by.
Yeah.
That's why people accuse him of being so self-referential, I think, because he is sort of fascinated by his own way in which
self-referential in the way that he's doing similar things consistently. Is that what you mean?
Or just like it's about him. Like that was a thing that I read about Interstellar, was like, this movie is the most like Nolan obsessed with Nolan. It just comes across as kind of arrogant or preoccupied rather than curious, even though it is presented as that. It seems like it's a little preachy. I don't know.
We endure.
Love is the answer. Okay, Tyler, we're almost at 2 hours. I'm gonna cut you off now.
Oh, there's no cut. I have nothing else to say. That's
okay,
a lot. I have so much more I could say, but yeah.
I feel like we should. I don't think that we should end with a ranking, because it's kind of. I think it's pretty obvious as we're talking, like what our favorites are. But maybe I'll ask you, what is the most meaningful one to you? Which one do you feel changed by, or maybe challenged by, as opposed to just entertained or? Yeah, what is the most meaningful of his films to you?
I mean, so we did a Nolan ranking in the Tenet episode, and I said Oppenheimer is speaking of objectivity and subjectivity, I said Oppenheimer is objectively the best, whereas Tenet was subjectively my favorite. But as far as like, meaning,
applicability. Like you're
would it be crazy if I said The Dark Knight Rises? Because I don't know. I was like, I was
think
so
that's it.
Emotionally moved by that movie, especially on
that
this
was
rewatch.
My guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
And your review was so I felt like you really got it.
Yeah,
like you really felt it as a person,
right.
not as a movie watcher.
Absolutely, right. Yeah,
as a human being.
There's something about that leap of faith. There's something about, you have to throw the rope away, right?
I know.
No more half measures. Yeah. This is it or nothing. And like I said, suffering is the only way through, and that's what leads to this sort of resurrection or this rebirth. And I think meaning wise, it may legitimately be The Dark Knight Rises, which is crazy. I never would have actually I mean, that one has always kind of low key been my favorite, not the best, but my favorite. So of the trilogy, at least, not of his films. Tenet is my favorite of his films, but I think it might be The Dark Knight Rises.
That's great.
Absurd. I
had
do I
that
lose my cinephile card for that or something? Whatever.
Yes,
I don't know.
Revoke.
Who cares?
No, I think that's great, and I think that's a very nice, like, kind of a, what do I want to call that? Like a wild card, like a Joker card, where it's like you pull it out and you're like, oh, it's this unexpected thing. Yeah. I actually oddly feel like mine was Insomnia. In terms of like, I love how the portrayal of somebody who like does not want to get away with it. Like actually, truly, even though all of his actions are towards like saving himself and like he's hiding stuff, I think he really wants Hilary Swank to catch him. I think that he like deep down actually does not want, and that's proven by the end, but I relate to that so much, where it's like, even though you're covering up and you're actively, you're on this like compulsion to save yourself, you deep down want somebody to make it so that you have no choice but to come clean.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Talking about unconscious realities there. You're acting out something that you can't understand. Like, there are many moments throughout that movie where you're like, well, why doesn't he just do this just to get away with it? Just do this. And then he doesn't. Right. And it's like, those are character complexities. So there's the one scene in particular with Hilary Swank where he has the chance to sign off on the report.
Yep.
And he looks at it. He looks at the blank signature line, and then he's about to sign it, and he looks at her and he says, you want to make sure you get all the facts,
your name,
before you put your name on this. And is
That's
that
right.
not the perfect way to end this episode? You want to make sure
That's what I'm
you want to make sure you get all the facts before you put your name on this, right? What everything that packs inside of that decision that he makes it's crystal.
And it's like, it's not about sacrifice, and it's not about like the greater good. It is literally about personal integrity.
Right.
I don't want to live with myself in betraying my own values. And to me, that is so like, and there's no noble lie. It's not about saving Gotham. It's not about anything. It's not even really about saving your own image. It's like being at peace, like where your conscience is clean, and you can go to sleep. The whole movie is like, it's insomnia because he can't.
Okay, can I say, after the movie was over last night, that sleep that he dies, but that sleep that he falls into looked so refreshing. Especially given like the whole movie, he's just struggling. Can somebody please give this man some blackout curtains? He's that sleep, the great abyss that he falls into looked so nice. I'm not saying I want to die. I'm just saying I turned over on the couch and I fell asleep after the movie was over, and I took like an hour-long nap, and I woke up really confused, like, because it was like 8 p.m. and I woke up at 9 p.m. like, oh my God, where am I? Do I have to go to school? Do I have to go teach? What happened? Like, I never fall asleep on the couch. Something about that movie made me fall asleep, and I think it had to do something with that. So anyway,
it is of like just coming to terms and like being like, I like the truth shall set you free. Yeah. It literally does. And then he's also like,
good night, sweet prince.
Like flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. Oh, that's a great way to end it. Okay, so I think Insomnia and Dark Knight Rises, those are good underrated gems in the Nolan filmography. Tyler, we did it. Thank God.
Can't believe it.
And we're gonna have to reconvene for the Odyssey. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll buy our tickets like a month in advance or whenever they come.
Absolutely. Can I say I went a whole episode without mentioning the Iliad because I got to mention the Odyssey. That's a win.
And actually, you didn't because you just mentioned it.
Oh. Oh, crap.
It's one of those wormholes that we...
our future selves put that wormhole there to actually help us get past this horror, okay?
You've come back from the future. You're actually speaking from the future now. Right. You've come back into this recording from the future to say that.
Hello, movie lovers. Welcome home.
We'll see you at the movies.